Hello, my name is Kym Langfield and I'm an illustrator. Today I'm going to talk about the process that I went through to illustrate the lovely story Solo Dan, which is written by Teena Raffa-Mulligan, and the publisher is Daisy Lane Publishing. The first step that I went through was reading the actual manuscript that Jennifer Sharp, my lovely publisher, sent me. I instantly fell in love with this story. The story is really meaningful to me, and I must admit that I shed a tear or two reading it. So it was a no-brainer to contact Jennifer and to say, yes, I would definitely love to illustrate this beautiful story. The next step was that I bought a cheap sketchbook from a $2 shop, and I printed out the manuscript. I cut it into the separate pages, the text into the separate pages, and then this helped me to visualize how the story might look. So these were my very rough sketches, extremely rough. Some pages only had some shapes to represent the characters and where I thought that they might go on the page. The next step was that I found out what the page sizes for the actual book would be. When I knew that, I used some cheap computer paper and I measured them up and cut the number of pages I would need for the story to the right size, and I allowed for margins and bleed marks and all that sort of thing. And then I got started illustrating the story. I just hand wrote the text in at this point to also help me think about where that would be placed on each page. So, for example, on this page, I thought that the text would go well up the top, okay? And then I sketched ideas. To help me draw things like the characters, I looked at photos that I had. For example, in one page of the story, there is a granddad featured. So I actually found some photos of my granddad and I looked at him in lots of different body positions and poses. And I had to go at sketching him. And I'm very observant when I go out for walks, having a look at people around me. I also treat Google as one of my friends. It's very handy to search for ideas. Sometimes I even use my own family members and my children to pose for me, so I know how to draw like an arm in a certain position or what someone looks like from the back. Okay, after I was quite happy with the illustrations, the roughs, the illustrations for the book, I photographed them all and I sent them to my publisher and to the author to consider. I received some very warm feedback from the both of them with only a few minor changes and adjustments to make, which I was very happy to do. And then it was ready for me to use the actual watercolor paper. To save some time, instead of redrawing every single page, I used my trusty light table, my tracing table, and I very roughly retraced the pictures. Once I had done that, I was ready to make some changes, refine the illustrations, improve them, add more details, and then I was ready for my favourite step, which is adding the colour. So I love to use watercolour especially, so I started to experiment with different colours on the watercolour paper, and I wanted to come up with a quick system because I knew there would be so many pages to paint. What I did was I came up with a colour palette, so I had to think about things like what colour did I want Dan's hair to be, what did I want him wearing in most of the pages, simple things like what would his eye colour be. I had to think about the other characters and objects in the story, and once I'd come up with a system, or I'd come up with the colours, I laid out all of the pages of the book and I actually went through one colour at a time. So Dan has his bright red hair, which Teena had always visualised when she was writing the story. So I went through and I used this colour in all of the pages on Dan's hair. Then I went through with the blue for his top, and I thought about, as well as his top, what other characters and objects would need the same type of blue. So I went through one colour at a time, and I found that I was very quickly moving through all the pages in the book rather than just concentrating on one page at a time. So first of all, I painted all the characters and all the objects, and then I had to think about how I wanted the background and the sky scenes to look like. I had to think about what time of the day it might have been on each page of the story, each spread. What could the weather have been like? How was Dan feeling? I wanted to reflect that in the sky around him. So on the front cover and in one of the pages of the story, he's swinging upside down, having a lot of fun. So I wanted to reflect this with a really bright and happy sky colour. On another page, he's having a very down part of the story. He's really sad. So I reflected that with rain and lots of heavy grey clouds. When I was happy with all of the paint, and I usually add some detail with coloured pencils as well, I again photographed all the pages and sent them through to Jennifer and Teena to consider. Again, they were both very, very positive, and there were only a few little things to change. For example, one of the characters later in the story, Teena had visualised being an older boy, a teenage boy, and for some reason I'd visualised a toddler. And she suggested that we think about making that character look older. So I was very happy to do that, and I had a lot of fun researching what teenage boys these days wear and how they walk, and I wanted to make this character look authentic to his age. So once I made those very final changes to the illustrations, I headed down to Officeworks. I didn't have a scanner at that point, and Officeworks did a great job scanning in all the pictures onto a USB. The pictures and the colours came out fantastic, and then I organised my own copy of Photoshop, the program Photoshop, and then I spent the next little bit of time uploading each picture onto Photoshop. I made slight editing changes, such as I might have brightened the colours. If I found a little mistake, a little mark, I was able to erase them. I could improve some of the colours and patterns and textures. I designed the end pages actually almost all on Photoshop using a watercolour cloud that I'd painted, and then I turned that into a repeated pattern for the end pages. Then came the big job of the text, laying out the text. So I had some time to experiment with different types of fonts from Photoshop. And when I came up with one that I was quite happy with, I typed up all the text into each page. Once that was done, it was time for Jennifer and Teena to have another look again, probably their most final look. They checked the text, made sure I hadn't made any little typo mistakes. They made a slight suggestion to altering the text slightly. I think we changed the text from being more of a bold and black colour to a more gentle dark grey and not bolded font, and I agreed that that did suit the soft look of the illustrations. Finally, then it was time for Jennifer to send the book off to the printers, and now we can celebrate the release of Teena's beautiful story, Solo Dan. I love the whole process. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.